we're going to go for that. Chromatic Cold, Frostfire, Arctic Displacer. Well, this is awkward. This is another Vesper. It's like a mediocre one, but we have an Iceblade Dryad and a Hearth Sister, which make this card insane, right? If you play this, you just play this in the farthest flung corner you can possibly find, and then you kill your opponent. Take 11. GG. It's also pretty good with Frostfire. Speaking of Frostfire, we have another Frostfire. I don't want a second Frostfire at this point with only 3 Vespers in my deck. Even though it goes pretty well with a few different cards we have, like we have a bunch of ranged minions, we have a few Vespers. That's situational enough, like we still have to stick a 2 health ranged minion, or find a Vesper and put it in a good position for this to work. So I'm happy to have 1, not 2. And then there's Chromatic Cold, which we sorely need removal. I like having a Dispel in my deck. This deals with ranged units in the same way that Silhouette Tracer does. I think we need this. The Displacer is like pretty sick for comboing with. I'm very tempted by that, but if you play it in a corner and they just have a removal spell, it doesn't do very much. Or if they stun it or something. We don't really need win conditions because we have Jack's True Sight, so I guess I'll just pick this removal spell to make sure we can survive. And the fact that it goes face is pretty good as well in our aggressive deck. Okay. I think we can ignore this pretty quickly, right? We're most of the way through the pack, so we really don't want to be taking speculative cards at this point. And we have 0 stun, so this card is literally useless. So let's ignore that. This card is a very good 4-drop, and we are lacking at that slot at the moment. It's pretty nice when you buff it. We only have Frostfire so far, but we also have Kinetic Surge, making it a 4/7, which is pretty great. And we can hide it and then get it into position with Hearth Sister, which makes it even better. And then there's this. This could be great. I don't know. Are we in need of 2 drops? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Only 4 of which we're really happy playing on turn 1. So I wouldn't mind this. I think the Sleet Dash is probably good enough to get through. These can be any faction epic, right? So sorry, any faction. They can be factional neutral epics, right? They could be anything. I'm trying to think if there's anything we particularly need that's an epic. I wouldn't mind another Iceblade Dryad, right? Get more Vespers. We can get Vesperic Call. And this just, I guess, epics are powerful. Cards are good. But I think the Sleet Dasher is like... This thing has a lot of utility at sweeping up the board in the mid-game. We might just want this for its utility. I don't know. I do feel like we are leaning in aggressive direction. Like, we don't have that much removal. This guy doesn't deal with large minions at all. So I guess maybe I just pick this. I've never seen this in action before, so let's just see what it does. The 2 picks of epic cards we had were pretty good, so... Oh, boom! Not bad. So this is kind of cute because it can steal opponent's spells, as well as duplicating Kinetic Surge, again, Frostfire and Chromatic. I mean, that's kind of nice. But it's nowhere near as good as these guys, right? So Mogwai, we do need card draw, and this is okay card draw, which is better than no card draw, usually. Bone Reaper, on the other hand, is just a ton of card advantage and tempo. It's not really the sort of bomb 6-drop you want, but it's large, hard to get through, and has an immediate effect. And this card, the numbers on it don't look that impressive, right? 2 power and 2 damage for 6 mana. But 9 health is a lot. And it buffs well. We can Frostfire it, right? So I think this thing, with its ability to defend us, if things hit the fan, like this can protect us, can protect our ranged units, can sweep up multiple enemy units, good against things like Wraithlings, locks down enemy generals. I think that's enough utility that we want this over this relatively marginal card draw. It's quite nice when you buff it, but a 2/3 for 3 is just not very exciting compared to other options. These cards are all much bigger or stickier, and this thing is like the king of big sticky stuff. So Icy, Arctic Displacer, and Dragonlark. So this does have the advantage of flying, so you can hide it in the back and then fly it in to attack something. But it's still a 2/1 for 1, right? So it's kind of a 1 mana 2 damage on a turn's delay, which is pretty awful. Icy we spoke about before. I don't like battle pets. We're not urgently in need of 2-drops right now. And this thing, we have combos for this, right? We have Iceblade Dryad, we have Hearth Sister, we have Frostfire. This is good in our deck. We can make use of this. So I think I'm going to pick the Arctic Displacer, and we'll try and do some memes with it. So we're nearing the end of the deck now. This is where I want to firm up. I want to firm up everything that I'm missing, basically. So right now I need removal. I'd like a little bit more card draw. I wouldn't mind some raw card power, especially in the 4 to 5 slot. Especially 4s. Like, we need some good 4s. I don't know how much we need card draw. Like, we don't massively need 2-drops. That's good, right? We've got a few 2-drops that we can play, and a couple that we're less happy to play on turn 1. We've got good 3-drops, which helps. And we've got some decent top end, but only one like really exciting card. So, with that in mind, low power in the deck and a bunch of like fragile cards normally means you want to play aggressively. Like, we have a lot of good ways to set up lethal. We have Jax, we have Arctic Displacer, we have Frostfire, we have Fire Spitter. Like, we have these cards that if we can protect them, will kill the opponent for us. Protecting units is hard when you don't have a lot of removal, right? You need so much removal to just protect a unit. The best way to protect a unit in Gauntlet, and even on the ladder, is just to be ahead on board. So what we need is like a solid curve of biggish stuff that holds down the board for us. And for that, I think we want to take the Fate Sealer over the Sojourner. Like, we don't need this as a Horn Shaman. Although it can provide a fair bit of tempo by just buffing things and being obnoxious, by itself, it's a 1/4 for 2. That's not very exciting, right? It's worse than Rock Pulverizer, and we dissed him enough already. So it has some utility, right? The card, the text box is not blank, but it very rarely does very much, and your opponent can just ignore this for a while. Sojourner is really good. I love this card, but I don't think what we need is a 1/5. Like, I'm just concerned that, I don't want to play a card draw spell that just draws me into more small cards, or doesn't protect me, doesn't push the board. This thing, a 4/4/4 doesn't really pass the vanilla test, right? It's underpowered. It's okay with the Bloodborne spell, making it a 5/5. 5/5s are pretty solid. But at least it can eat a 2-drop, right? It's not much better than a 3/4, but it will eat 2-drops and 3-drops, and then die to the general hit. However, we get a faction legendary. What can we open? Let me see if I can remember all the faction legendaries offhand. Grandmaster Embler, amazing card. Frostiver, pretty good. Like, vulnerable to Dispel. If they don't have Dispel, you win the game. My god, I don't play enough Vannar. Ancient Grove? That's bomby as hell. That's pretty good. Ghost Seraphim, also bomby. Nice top end. So far we've got a bunch of big things. There must be, like Gravity Well. That's not very exciting, but we can at least synergize it with Kara's Bloodborne spell and with Circulus, and use it to protect our ranged units, so that could be alright as a utility card. White Asp, that card is disgusting. Winter's Wake, no. So we won't be able to pick that. I don't know what else. Yeah, whatever, let's just see what it does. I want the body. Oh, yeah, this card. Oh, man. Okay, so this is all pretty good. This is pretty good. So we have 2 massive bombs. Now, we're not really lacking in bombs right now, right? We have 2 pretty powerful cards at the top end, but we don't have any really large creatures, which does draw me to the Seraphim. I mean, I guess a 7/7 provoke that also makes other provokes is possibly even better. You get immediate value from this. And they're also really good with Kara's Bloodborne spell, which is a thought. But 7 mana for a 7/7, like, playing this card by itself, 7/7 provoke usually does something, but if your opponent has a big minion as well, much less likely. Ghost Seraphim is handy if we get a randomly powerful spell in the last few picks, right? If we get a Spirit of the Wild, we can pick it with this and have fun. Then there's this, which is just a really powerful AoE, and we don't have any AoE yet. So this could be really good for reusing like crappy little things. It's good with Circulus. You know, you take a 2/1 and blow it up. You can transmute an opponent's minion with it, so you can kill things around it and possibly make it smaller. And that might make it better than these. We don't really have anything that goes with this. We do have synergy with this. I guess we have synergy with this because you can Bloodborne spell it. That does make this a 9/10, actually, by default, right? Because you can play it as a 9/10 for 7, which is so big. I might just pick this based on sheer size. 9/10 is enormous. Although I guess it's a 10/10. Like, it's worse than Dragonbone Golem still, even if it has some synergy that we're not taking advantage of. So on reflection, that's not very exciting. I guess I want this, like, do you get an illusion if you play it on a Circulus? I think so, yeah. Because Circulus is when you cast, so she'll trigger first. I think we want this. It's a great tempo spell. We don't have any AoE. We have very little removal. I think we want this more. Well, we've talked about why these are bad. Here's some Dispel. This is kind of useful because it lets us use the Chromatic Cold for removal and still have a Dispel in the deck if the opponent pulls out some kind of big pump spell like this Frostfire. Or an Owl Beast Sage or something. I don't tend to like having more than one Shroud in a deck, for reference. I think Shroud is, like, the body is such a downside. You're spending an entire card just on dispelling something, leaving their body behind. So unless it's a minion that's damaged, or they put a pump spell on it, it's usually not worth it. Rock Pulverizer again. I don't think we need this over these other cards. Blazehound, this card is pretty good, actually. I don't mind cycling to help find my combo pieces, my Frostfires, my Jaxes, my Cryptographer, my Iceblade Dryad, my Legendaries, which are just, bomby. And it's obviously quite good if your opponent has a full hand. You can occasionally draw a card off it, which is actually not nothing. Like, if you're going second and your opponent misses their turn 1 play, you play this and draw a card. So punishing. So I talked about Storm Metal before. We don't really need this guy anymore, right? We have a Bone Reaper and a Drax. So I think these are pretty good. We're lacking in something that is just raw stats. We have a couple of high power minions, but nothing with particularly high toughness, and that could be an issue for us. I think we're going to try and get away with using Kara's Bloodborne spell instead. So I think I'm going to pick this Blazehound because we've only got 4 3-drops, and we've got a deck that's got a fair amount of combos in it. Another Frostfire, another Arctic Displacer, and a Healing Mystic. So I don't think I want 2 Arctic Displacers in the same deck. I know, like, you could have all the Vesper synergy and the Hearth Sisters in the world, and I wouldn't want 2 of these, I think. They're so clunky. Like, it's the sort of card where, like, if you draw this and a Healing Mystic and the game looks like it's going to go in that direction, then sure. Otherwise, just don't bother. Are we at the stage? So we can now basically look at... We have a complete deck here, right? We've got 2 more shots of getting a Vesper, but We're looking at a complete deck. Are we going to be able to use Frostfire? Like a second Frostfire, effectively? And I think the answer is pretty clearly no. We have a few cards that are good to buff. I think 6 in total. We have 4 Vespers, and 3 range minions, so that's 7 cards. Plus a Celerity minion, that's 8. And a Circulus, that makes 9. That's 9 cards. But in a lot of these cases, you're not protecting the minion. So if you play the Frostfire and the Veil Hunter, you kill something. Your opponent, it's still a 4/2, like that's not very hard to kill. If you're near your opponent, it can just die for free and you down a card. So that's unexciting to me. I really want to be casting in on Vespers to get that toughness buff. Unless my Veil Hunter's in a really safe spot where my opponent has to use a removal spell and we trade 2 for 2. Putting it on Vespers is obviously amazing, but I only have so many of those and I already have a Vesper that's kind of conditional. So I do not want this. We know we don't want this. So, I'm kind of happy to pick like a good 2-drop that has some decent sticking power in the late game. Being able to heal something for 2 at an opportune moment is pretty handy. So I think I'm not unhappy picking this. Even if it does lower the curve a touch too much. Ooh. Mindwarper Soul and Grimes. This is dreadful. We can ignore this. Like, it's a battle pet, which is already bad. It's a 1/1, which is bad. And it has some synergy that we literally can't use because we have no pets in the deck. Are you still on the same draft as when I was here earlier? Yes. I promised depth and I've been giving it. Wow, I've actually been at this for ages. I didn't realise how long I'd been. Never mind, it'll make great YouTube educational footage. So, Mindwarper and Grimes. I actually kind of rate this card. Like, the chances of it drawing you something are not massively high in Gauntlet compared to on Ladder, where there are some matchups where it's a guaranteed draw. But it's, you know, when it hits, it's card advantage. A 4-3 body that draws a card is good. A 4-3 body that doesn't draw a card for 4 mana is terrible. So it kind of, well, I say good. It's very, very polarizing. Like sometimes you'll, even if you steal a bad spell, it still replace, right? So it draws a card. And sometimes you'll steal something that's really good that helps you win the game, like you hit a Trinity Oath or a removal spell or something. Grimes, we've already got a bunch of 6-drops, but Grimes is pretty strong. Like, this card is scary and annoying and goes really well with Kinetic Surge. And for that purpose, for that end, I'm kind of tempted to just pick it anyway. Like, we have a lot of 2-drops, so we might need some bombs to make up for it, to help us push through to the late game. Like, we're going to put our opponent off balance and then potentially just run out of gas. Cards like this can help, but this isn't very reliable. Now, Grimes, obviously, sometimes it makes a 10-10 and sometimes it makes a 1-1, but you get 2 rolls, which helps a lot. On average, it makes a couple of 3/3s-ish, which is pretty good as far as I'm concerned. The fact that it can make Vespers doesn't hurt either, because we have some synergy there. And worst comes to worst, like, it makes 2 cards, which are usually not that bad. And then when it dies, it makes another one. That's quite a bit of advantage. Since your opponent will usually respect it, in my experience, right? Grimes is pretty scary. You might see it dispelled. So it trades resources pretty well, even if the rolls aren't amazing. And obviously sometimes you'll Dragonbone Golem and your opponent just loses. So I think I want this RNG over this RNG. I feel like this is more consistently powerful. Obviously it's more expensive, but and it's also more intimidating. Like, this card is just good. It's also a much better top deck. Like, if we both run out of resources, this is a really good draw. Like, we play this in Kinetic Surge, we get a 4/4 and a buffed something else, and then when it dies we get something else again. That's great. Snap off the Grimes. Purgatos, Dragolord, Spirit of the Wild. So, we want 4-drops, and this is a very good card to buff. 3/4 is not great, but it's healing, which we don't have much of, I think any of. It's extra damage, and like, if this guy rolls face twice, that adds up. You know, if your opponent's forced to attack it, they can take a lot of damage pretty quickly. And it fills a hole in our curve that we're currently suffering from. This guy, we do not need more value 6-drops. We got loads of those. So I think we can ignore the Dragolord pretty easily, even though he's good. And a Vesper. That makes me sad. Is flying Dragolord worth the opportunity cost of having 5 6-drops in the deck? I don't think it is. This card, we already have a bunch of combos, right? We have Jax, we have Arctic Displacer. I mean, I guess this with Arctic Displacer is just lethal. As is with, and the same with Frosthorn Rhino. That's kind of tempting. It's a shame that you can't play them both in the same turn, though. So you have to go Displacer or Rhino, Hearth Sister, Spirit of the Wild, which, considering they're one-ofs, is probably not worth it when I can just take this card that fills my curve. And I already have, again, a bunch of like janky win cons. The opponent's not going to be on full health, chances are. Like, we've got a fairly aggressive start. We've got some good tempo tools. Like, these cards are all pretty aggressive. Like, chances are we're going to be going face a fair amount. So we don't need our combos to do all that much damage. So just Displacer, Hearth Sister will be good enough. So I'm going to take this Purgatos, because he goes with both plans, right? Helps keep us alive. Helps keep us alive. Helps pressure the opponent. Helps win the game. And fills a hole in the curve. And again, it's really good with Kinetic Surge. Alright, so it's 20 past 10. All that talking's worn my throat out pretty hard. So I'll play like a game or two, and then we'll come back to this